So in this presentation, I'm going to show you how to make strong bones, because bones aren't meant to deteriorate. Osteoporosis should not be happening. And yet how many people have osteoporosis? It's incredible. There's a group of people called the Hunzas. Have you heard of the Hunzas living in the Himalayan mountains? Supposed to be one of the healthiest people on the planet. And that's where the game polo came from, you know, the hitting of the ball on the horse. And, you know, sometimes they fall off horses and they don't break their bones. In fact, osteoporosis is unheard of. They're breathing in incredible oxygen. They don't have anything to clog up their airways, so they're all nose abdominal breathers. They're eating organic food. They're having the purest water. There's nothing coming in to cause the bones to deteriorate. So there are a few reasons why bones are deteriorating. In my last presentation, we looked at the hormones, and I touched on it, but I'll explain it in detail now. Osteoclast cells are the bone cells that take away old bone. So they take away the old bone. So they're important because it's important that old bone be taken away. And your osteoblast cells, so the way you remember this, a blast of new bone, they create the new cells. So new bone. And the way God designed the body to work was that there be a balance. You want the right amount of osteoclast taking away old bone, and you want the right amount of osteoblast that are creating the new bone. Now, when that happens, there's no problems. But the hormone imbalance that I explained to you in my previous lecture, that's getting estrogen level too high and progesterone level is too low, it is estrogen that stimulates the osteoclast cells, and it is progesterone that stimulates the osteoblast cells. So anyone that has osteoporosis, they should go on the Anna's Wild Yam Cream, because the Anna's Wild Yam Cream will boost progesterone and bring estrogen under control. Estrogen's not bad, it's just when it's in high amounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a list of what you can do to strengthen your bones. And as we go through that list, I will be explaining why these things are necessary to strengthen the bones. And so the first thing is to balance the hormones. Number one, balance hormones. And if you have someone or know someone with a hormone imbalance or osteoporosis, and you want to share with them the importance of going on the yam cream to get the balance back, just get them to watch, it's on YouTube, a presentation on the hormones. And that will help them to understand why they need to balance the hormones and how the Anna's Wild Yam Cream will do that. Number two, minerals. Minerals are vital because that's what bones are made of. Bones are not made of calcium. Bones are made of 64 trace minerals and 12 minerals. So what are the 12 minerals? So with the 12 minerals, boron, and yes, calcium is part of it, chromium, iron, magnesium, manganese, silicon, sulfur, and selenium, potassium, phosphorus, and zinc. That's what bones are made of. And 64 trace. And so the worst thing you can take for bones is a calcium supplement, because bones aren't made of calcium. And taking in a calcium supplement, all that does is cause a mineral imbalance in the body. And when the body has too much calcium, it'll dump it on the bones as bone spurs. So for strong bones, that's what our bones need, because that's what they're made of. So how can we get that? Seawater. Seawater contains 92 minerals. And it's not very nice to drink. And the good news is we don't have to drink seawater. But you can get a salt that's made from seawater that has similar, which is Celtic salt. So your Celtic salt has 82 minerals. So where are the other 10? Well, they're in such pico proportion, barely measurable, that some are lost and obviously will be with the evaporation process. And one of those minerals is iodine. One lady rang me or she emailed me, she said, Barbara, there's no iodine in Celtic salt and there's no iodine in Himalayan salt. And I said, you're absolutely right. So should we have iodized salt? Well, when you open the iodized salt container, the iodine all evaporates. So within about a day, you've got no iodine in that anyway. And when the waves are crashing in the sea, the iodine goes into suspension, goes and settles in the earth. That's why most people that have thyroid problems are living right in the middle of a country, because they're eating food that are grown in the middle. It's very low in iodine. So how can you boost your iodine? You can buy iodine from the chemist. Sometimes it's sold as Lugol solution, and just put it on your skin and the body will take that up. In fact, if you want to test if your iodine levels are as they should be, just put a drop on the inside of your arm. And if your iodine levels are low, that brown patch will be gone within an hour. But if your iodine levels are good, after 5 hours, you'll still see a semblance of brown. You see, the body just takes what it needs. So that's a good test to see if your iodine levels are low. Himalayan salt is probably the next best, and Himalayan salt contains 75 minerals. Now, looking at seawater, 30% of those minerals is sodium and 50% is chloride. And because sodium chloride makes up the most, they're the first crystals formed when the water is evaporated. And so what man does, scoops up those first crystals, bleaches it white, puts aluminium with it, so it runs freely. There's your table salt. And that's why table salt is not a good salt. Because when your body tastes salt, it thinks it's getting this, but it gets this, and it causes an imbalance in and out of the cell. So it does get the blood pressure up. And be careful, because sometimes they call this sea salt. So if it says sea salt, it's pure white and it runs freely, be very concerned. I don't know if you've ever had Celtic salt, but it's grey and it's very wet. And the reason it is so wet is the Celtic salt contains 3 magnesiums. And magnesium is a water-hungry molecule. And so it pulls water into itself. So especially when it's raining a lot outside, your Celtic salt's going to get really wet. It's all right. You've got 3 magnesiums. And that explains why when you take a crystal of Celtic salt before you have a glass of water, the mucous membranes in the mouth absorb the minerals, the magnesium goes to the cell wall, then you have your water, and the magnesium, as a water-hungry molecule, pulls the water inside the cell. It's the quickest way to hydrate a body. And in Matthew 5:13, the Bible talks about salt. It says, "Ye are the salt of the earth. If the salt has lost its savour, wherewith shall it be salted?" It's Old English. If the salt has lost its savour. I'd like to suggest this salt has lost its savour. It's lost all the other minerals. The Bible says it's now good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden underfoot of men. It's not a good salt. And because it causes imbalances and even blood pressure to rise, a lot of people are told, don't eat salt. But I ask you, what's a baked potato without salt? What's lentils without salt? Our palate tells us we need a little salt. So when you take the Celtic salt, a crystal before every glass of water, and put it on your baked potato and put it on your food, that is contributing to your mineral load in your body. And so I'm going to say whole salt. I know in America you can get something called real salt. So there are a few different brands, but if you're wondering if it's good salt, just ring them up or email them and say, can you give me a mineral analysis of your salt to find out if it has all the minerals in it? Knowing this, you can see why when I'm in Ireland, diving in the sea every morning, I have a mouthful of seawater. I wouldn't do that if I was diving in the sea near a city, but I don't think I'd want to dive in the sea near a city. Your heavy metals sink to the bottom, so it's not going to be contaminated with heavy metals. So what takes up the heavy metals that are pumped into the sea from industry is the vacuum cleaners of the sea. What are they? There's your oysters, there's your crabs, there's your lobsters, there's your prawns. No, what you know, the Bible says don't eat that stuff. But also, I'm also cautious of seaweeds because the seaweeds can also take it up. So the whole salt. Where else you'll get minerals like this is in dark green leafy vegetables. But before I explain that anymore, in the book, The Calcium Lie, Dr. Robert Thompson, he believes that seawater is the clearest indicator of a creator God, because those 92 minerals are the exact same mineral balance and proportion as is found in our blood, found in our tissues, in our bones. In fact, in the war, if you're in the Navy and needed a blood transfusion, they transfuse you with the seawater because it's an isotonic solution, exact same mineral balance as is found in the body. And so that's the other place where you can get your minerals. It's also important to eat organic food. And the reason organic food is important is because what the organic farmer will do, he feeds his soil with compost. When the ban was put on me in 2019, I became Misty Mountain's gardener, and I love gardening. And when you understand how to grow healthy vegetables, you begin to understand, you begin to understand and know how to grow a healthy body. In his book, The Calcium Lie, Robert Thompson shows that 50 years ago, there was twice as many minerals in the soil as there is today. Now, if the soil's deficient, the plant's deficient, and the people that eat that plant will be deficient. So we know that people who are living on fast food, they're not going to have many minerals, but there are people today who are eating fruits and vegetables who are still showing a mineral imbalance or mineral deficiency because of the soils that the minerals are grown in or the plants are grown in. So let me show you the process. Here's a plant. And what the organic gardener does is he feeds the soil. And so we have to now come back to compost. So in my garden, in the vegetable garden at Misty Mountain, we have 3 compost bins. One we're adding to, one is sitting, and one we're taking from. Now, the one we're taking it and putting it into the garden. And the cycle of life, all the microorganisms are bringing the compost back to dust. It's the cycle of life, or the carbon cycle. The Bible says in Genesis 3:19, we come from dust, we go back to dust, we're dust. It's the cycle of life that brings us back to dust. So the microorganisms are bringing the matter back to dust. And I know when that compost is ready because I'll dig it up and smell it. And it smells like earth. Smells very nice. Now, when I put that compost into my garden, I'm putting in microorganisms. And they're the microorganisms that cause the plant to grow. They're the microorganisms that cause the flower to develop, that cause the apple to come from the flower. But when the apple, it fully grows on the tree, it's not ready to ripe. It now must ripen. And those same microorganisms cause it to ripen. And then when it falls on the ground and no one eats it, it rots. Is that right? But it's still got its skin on it. So what causes it to rot? The same microorganisms. They change roles according to the environment. So they're now bringing that apple back to dust. So in my compost bin is alive with microorganisms. And now I put it in the ground. And what those microorganisms are responsible for is they're responsible for the final breakdown of minerals out of the soil. And they're responsible for the absorption of the minerals out of the soil and into the plant. They protect the plant. And they also nourish the plant. So my vegetables grown in my garden are incredibly high in minerals because of the microorganisms in the soil. So what's happening today is the same plants are grown again and again and again in the same soil. And so that they look all right, they put superphosphate in it. Superphosphate creates show ponies of vegetables, looks good, but very, very low in minerals for the person that's going to eat that. Now, this plant, let's say it's a broccoli plant, when I've eaten that and harvested it, I cannot put another plant back into that soil unless I put more compost in, because the broccoli took minerals, nutrients out of the soil. And if I don't replace those nutrients in the soil, my next crop of vegetables is going to be deficient. Can you see that? And people look at the garden and say, why aren't the moths eating your vegetables? I say, oh, I don't know, but they're not. They're flying all around. It's because that plant is so high in minerals, it resists the bugs. That's a good illustration of the body. So that's why it's important to have organic as much as possible. At Misty Mountain Health Retreat, we are not 100% organic. It's very hard to be 100%, but we do the best we can. We grow all our greens, and it's sometimes in the year just about everything we're eating is out of the garden, but not always. So you do the best you can. That's all you can do. So organic, dark green. So we've always got lots of these. And we've got so many dark green leafy vegetables today. I know, 30 years ago, we didn't know what kale was. We didn't know what rocket was. But they're lovely, lovely greens that really spark up a salad. So that's why we had to put organic in there. Dr. Robert Thompson's book, The Calcium Lie, it's a fascinating book. He was a GP and he was about to get out of medicine because people weren't getting better. But, you know, it takes 7 years to train to be a doctor. So he decided to do a nutrition course and his eyes were opened and he said, you know, we learn all this, but we skim over it. So it's all about the minerals. So it's important to have the whole salt. It's important to have organic dark green leafy vegetables. Now, the clearest indication of the state of your bones is the only exposed bone in the body. You know where that is? It's your teeth. It's your teeth. Your teeth, your hair, actually, your skin, your eyes are all an illustration of the nutritional status of your body, because we are what we eat. But we're not only what we eat, it's actually whether it's organic or it has all of those nutrients in it. Even if you live in an apartment, get some pots, get some good quality soils. That sounded like a wonderful stainless steel water bottle there, which we're very happy to hear. And even just grow parsley, grow rocket, grow some greens. So even to do that. Now, we have something in Australia called sea salt. I don't know if you have it here, but it's concentrated seaweed extract, and it's incredibly high in minerals. And if you live near the sea, you can get a bottle of seawater and put a little bit in your water for the spraying of the plants once a week. Because what are you putting into your plant then? That's a real cheap way to put minerals into your soil. One of the problems is, though, and we'll look at number 3, is there are some things must stop because they're taking the minerals. Now, before I go there, I want to mention one more point, which is essential. Does everyone know the vitamin that's needed to absorb calcium? It's D. Yeah. So this is vitamin D. So what happens is the UVB rays from the sun, they hit a form of cholesterol just under the skin, and that's why cholesterol, again, is very important. If you don't have enough cholesterol, you're not going to be able to make your vitamin D. If you don't have enough cholesterol, you're not going to be able to make your sex hormones. If you don't have enough cholesterol, you're not going to make enough vitamin D. And vitamin D is essential in the assimilation and the utilization. And the utilization of calcium. And calcium is called the king because once calcium gets in, all the other minerals piggyback on the back. And because it's called the king, because all the other minerals piggyback on the back when vitamin D gets it in, it's been misunderstood. So the worst thing is calcium supplements. So the good news is you can stop buying calcium supplements and use that money to get more organic dark greens and more, and look for that Celtic salt. So how do we get vitamin D? Well, there's only one way, and that's the sunshine. So in 1890s, the figures are that 80% of children living in North London had rickets. I think you may have heard of rickets as Londoners, yeah? So I've got a photo of 3 girls, and this photo was taken in the late 1800s. So I'm not a great drawer, but I think you'll get the gist. There's one little girl who's very happy because she doesn't have rickets, but these little girls are very unhappy because this little girl's, her legs are bow legs like this. And this little girl, her legs go in like this. It is estimated that a huge amount of women died in childbirth because their pelvises broke because it hadn't developed properly as a child because they had rickets. Now, it's such a terrible drawing, I have to wipe it off very quickly, but I think you get the idea. My son James is an artist. He'd be horrified at that drawing, but you get the idea. Did you know that rickets is returning? And did you know that for 300 years, children suffered and sometimes died from rickets before finally they acknowledged it was a vitamin D deficiency? One doctor, he wrote an article in a medical journal in the late 1800s saying that he thought it was a vitamin D deficiency because the gypsy children didn't have rickets. Where are the gypsy children? They're running out the hills in the sunshine. And they're probably eating the greens. Isn't that what gypsies did? They ate a lot of those herbs and those greens from the garden. And in Psalm 104, verse 14, God said that he gave herbs for the service of man, those dark green leafy vegetables, all of them are actually considered herbs. There's your rocket, your kale, your coriander is your wintergreen, and your basil is your summer green. And you've heard of pesto, that's, and if I don't have enough basil to make pesto, I'll use parsley because parsley grows all year, and just put some dried basil in so you can be making pesto all year. That's a great way to get it into the kids, and because they'll always eat noodles, isn't that right? And in Australia you can buy pulse pasta now, which is pasta made out of chickpeas, pasta made out of red lentils. So you can be giving them a noodle dish and it's actually pesto and lots of greens. So there's good ways to get the greens, the salts, and some more of the proteins in your legumes. So when it was finally discovered that it was a vitamin D deficiency that was causing rickets, then nurses gave mothers classes on how to put their babies and their children in the sun. Do they still have those classes? No. In fact, the poor old sun now has been blamed for skin cancer. It's just crazy. The sun's always been there. The skin cancer's only been around in the last, 100 years? But I also stress to people with dark skin, sometimes you need 10 times the sunshine of the light-skinned people. It's a good idea to, maybe we can run out in the break. There's a bit of sunshine there. You've got to get into that sun as much as possible. So in Norway, skin cancer rates rose something like, it was about 400% from the 1980s to early 2000s, and they put it down to two things. The Norwegians were spending more time indoors, and when they went outside, they put sunscreen on. Because what sunscreen does is it totally blocks the UVB. So can you see someone having sunscreen on and they're on cholesterol-lowering medication? Wow, they're in dire straits for the start of osteoporosis. So we need sunshine. It does store quite well, so as much as possible, if you get your time in the sun, if you work in the office, please go and sit in the sunshine in your lunch break and loosen your shirt and pull your sleeves up and get as much sun as possible. If you've got white skin like me, be cautious. I have to do 10 minutes front, 10 minutes back, or 15. But little by little, you can get a tan. So all of that is important to ensure the minerals. And of course, the minerals are important because that's what bones are made up of. But there are some things that must stop. And the reason these must stop is because they leach the minerals, particularly calcium and magnesium. Excuse me, time for a drink. So the most guilty is refined sugar. I homeschooled my children. A couple of times a week, I'd make a dessert. And I'd make the dessert out of dried fruit. So if I make an apple pie, I put some sultanas in with the apples. And that's about the only sweetening that I use. Sometimes I'd make a sweet pumpkin pie. And when I did that, I would cook the pumpkin with dates. And that cooks down really soft. Then you blend it with coconut cream and delicious, bit of grated lemon rind. So I'd often just get your normal cookbooks and I just replace honey or dried fruits for the sugar. I'd replace the white flour with the spelt flour, and you can make some delicious desserts. So there's no need for the refined sugar. Nothing wrong with the sugar cane, but if you ever eaten sugar cane, it'll take you about 2 hours to eat 2 inches. It's very, very, very tough to eat. And that's the way God planned it, that you only eat a little bit at a time, but it takes 1 meter to deliver 1 teaspoon of sugar. So it's like a can of Coke, 10 teaspoons of sugar in a can of Coke. What's that? 10 meters of sugar cane in a can of Coke. So it definitely, there's no doubt about it, it's a highly addictive drug. And it also, because it's so naked, it has no minerals at all, it leaves your body dressed with your minerals. And so refined sugar leaches calcium, and they're the 2 main minerals that are leached, is the calcium and magnesium out of the body. What also leaches minerals is caffeine. Caffeine also leaches the calcium and the magnesium. And how many people in aged care facilities are given tea, coffee, 3 or 4 times a day, and a big calcium tablet to take with their tea and coffee? And then some sugar biscuits that have got more sugar in them. It just defies reason. And have they got osteoporosis? Yes, yes. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results is not working. So these are probably the 2 main ones. Alcohol, but not as much. Alcohol more totally depletes the B vitamins. They're your brain vitamins, contributing to the damage in the brain. Drugs never cure disease. They just change the form and location of disease. They might mask symptoms initially, but they never cure. They never cure. And they also have the ability to leach the minerals, because the body does see them as enemies to the body. It might surprise you to know, we're up to number 4, that bones need water. We don't, obviously the blood needs to be kept fluid by us drinking adequate water. Our lymphatic fluid, it's fluid, it needs water. But bones, we don't think of bones needing water, but those cells need water just as much as any other part of the body. And one of the beauties of the water, it helps to bring the nutrients in and also take the waste out. Number 5 is exercise. Strength comes by exercise. There's no other way. We know that exercise strengthens muscles, but it also strengthens bones. And the best bone building exercise is gravity defying exercise, because the best way to strengthen the body is to defy gravity. You look at children. I had 6 babies. Within a few weeks, they're trying to push their head up. They're trying to push their head up. And then when you put them on the floor, it's not long before they're pushing up. And then they get up on their hands and knees. What are they constantly doing? Defying gravity. And then eventually they're up walking around the furniture. And then they start running. And then you put them in their cot and they start jumping. They start jumping. I've come to the conclusion that people's bones deteriorate and we get old because we stop jumping. And the best exercise for jumping is the rebounder. The rebounder is a little mini trampoline. And the reason why that's such a good bone strengthening exercise is because every jump you're defying gravity. You're going up, up, up. And if you've got a trampoline in your home and kids visit, where are the kids? They're on the trampoline. I had a trampoline for a while for the grandkids, but while I was away, a big wind came along and tipped it up and threw it down on the road. So it was never the same again. But the grandkids are all a bit older now. And they love the trampoline. Isn't that true? Whenever kids come, they're all on the trampoline, jumping, jumping, jumping. And then it's not long before you hear a cry and they've hit heads. Is that right? So I made a rule. Okay, only one at a time. And then the 3 little boys came in and said, Grandma, we need to talk to you. I said, yes. They said, it is such fun being on the trampoline. If we cry, don't come. We'll handle it. I said, all right. So they're all jumping around and I hear a cry and I just look out the window and the other kids are shh, shh, shh. I tell you what, even if they come with bruises and cuts, it's far better than the damage done on those computers. Is that right? Those violent games that many children are watching. The bruise and the cut, or even falling off and breaking a leg, that will heal. But the damage done in the brain cannot heal. So the trampoline is a great additive to every family home. And some ladies say, well, Barbara, I won't buy a rebounder because I've got a trampoline out the back. I said, well, that's good, but I can tell you right now, you'll never get there. She said, yeah, you're right. If you want to exercise, you must make an appointment. You have to make an appointment with yourself or you'll never do it because there's never time. There's never time. The only way I could exercise was get up early. And to get up early, I had to go to bed early. So you got to start the day before and then make an appointment to do it. So that little rebounder, all you need is 3 minutes, 3 times a day. That's nothing. That's hardly anything. Do you have to keep it to that? No, if you're having fun, just stay on it. And if you're not used to jumping, this is called the health bounce. You just start with this. You just start with that. And if you need to hold on, go near the veranda pole or something. Or you can get rebounders that have bars. But the benefits from the rebounder are amazing. So you can Google and get a video on it or a book on it. It'll help your eyesight. How does it help your eyesight? Well, every 10 jumps, I change my focus. So if I'm jumping here, I'm looking out that window, I'll focus on the tree and the window frames jump. And after 10 jumps, I'll focus on the window frame and then the tree in the background jumps. What it does is it strengthens your short and long range muscles in your eyes. So it helps your eyesight. You can strengthen upper body. What I do is I do 10 jumps with my arms out. And that strengthens my biceps. And then I do 10 jumps with my palm up and that strengthens my triceps. So you can definitely do upper body muscle and bone. So exercise is vital to keep the bones strong so they don't deteriorate. And if they have deteriorated, to resume it. So remember with exercise, what you're stimulating, not only bone and muscle strength, but you're stimulating blood movement. And remember what the blood carries oxygen. And every cell that has oxygen will give you 18 times more energy. And you'll get more energy because your respiration will increase, which means instead of breathing in 500 mil and breathing out 500 mil, as you are right now, when you start breathing deeply, you're breathing in 3,600 mil of air and breathing out 3,600 mil of waste. So not only does blood carry the oxygen, blood carries the nutrients. So it's very important that you be eating organic food, whole foods, unrefined foods, unaltered foods, so that your blood has the nutrients. Don't think I did that quite right. Better make up my mind what I'm going to write. I'm still mastering the art of saying one thing and writing another. Nutrients. Got it right. And of course, the blood also carries the water. The blood does something else. It takes away waste. And there's always waste from cellular combustion of glucose and oxygen at the cell level. No wonder Leviticus 17:11 says the life of the flesh is in the blood. So exercise moves blood. So exercise, and the exercise is rebounder. Anything that defies gravity will strengthen the bones. So obviously your push-ups, did you do your push-ups today? It was raining this morning, so I had to do push-ups. And ladies, you can do ladies push-ups on your knees. And if you can't even do that, do push-ups on the wall, and then bit by bit, you can get down to the floor. There's an interesting verse in the Bible, and we may know it well. It's Proverbs 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. It says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not unto thine own understanding, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thy own eyes. Fear the Lord, depart from evil, and it will be strength, it will be health to thy body and marrow to thy bones. Do you know what's made in the marrow of your bones? Your blood. That's where your blood is made. So what are these verses saying? Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. So when you trust in the Lord with all your heart, you're not worrying. And so de-stress, we'll call it de-stress. When a person is stressed, anxious, it has an effect on the bones. So how can you de-stress? Well, I have discovered that a well-hydrated body that exercises every day, that eats organic food and has all the minerals, whose hormones are balanced, who's not taking in any of the stimulants, and who's having sunshine every day. And the next one, sleep. And this afternoon, we're going to look at sweet sleep, how to produce sweet sleep. I find that that body copes with stress. But if the body hasn't had enough sleep, they're dehydrated, they're not eating well, and often that person will reach to these to give their body a bit of a lift, and then it's just a vicious cycle. And then stress can certainly tip the scales. I think that everyone has stress in their life, and it's incredible some of the people that I've met, what they've been through, and they're handling it well. And so the foundation, again, is those 8 laws. So we've basically looked at the 8 laws on how to get strong bones. The Proverbs 11, verse 1, it says, a false balance is not good. The body runs according to precision balance. And so that balance is important with the hormones. That balance is important with the nutrients. That balance is important in the right minerals. That balance is important with full hydration. Exercise brings the balance by moving the blood evenly all through the body. I used to get cold feet all the time. And then that was about 16 years ago, and then I began to exercise every day, and I don't have cold feet anymore. Perfect health requires perfect circulation. That means that every part of the body is the same temperature. Before we close, are there any questions? It's 1 o'clock. That's good. Maybe everyone's hungry. Yeah, you had a question? 15 years ago, I had bad circulation, and I started exercising, because perfect health requires perfect circulation. And so what I needed to do, I thought I didn't need to exercise because I was always busy. But it's not. You've got to exercise. Yeah, hands up the back. Pardon? How to de-stress? Is that the question? Drink more water, go to bed early, exercise, and breathe deeply. And do what the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, in everything give thanks. There's some good ways to do it. There's a hand up the back, yeah? Do you know what I have found in sickle cell anemia? A lot of dark-skinned people seem to be prone to sickle cell anemia. So I've been dialoguing with a few people, and they told me that once they implemented those laws of health, started exercising, started going to bed early, nutritious food, it helped. I think it's something that will always be there, but you can manage it by diet and lifestyle. Yeah. Yeah, you can certainly get cardio on a rebounder, especially if you jog. And cardio is important because a lot of weight builders that only do weights, they lack cardio, so their heart's not as strong as someone that is doing cardio. That is true. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Skip rope is good, but what I find is that with the rebounder, you don't get any jarring. See, runners and skippers, every time they land on the ground, there's a jar. Mind you, it is cushioned if they land on their toes, because we should be toe runners and toe skippers. Children will never run on their heels, but joggers have been padded up to the point where a lot of people that jog, they heel strike, and that's when the lower back and the hamstring problems happen. I run in barefoot runners, and the barefoot runners have a thin sole, and you're always on the ball of your foot. See, the ball of your foot was designed to cushion the fall. But so skipping but you must skip on the earth, because the earth gives a little bit more than cement or tar. So that's what you have to be mindful with skipping is the jarring to lower back and hip. Whereas the rebound, you get this shock absorber cushioning effect. Yeah.
There's a question online about alternative to add 1 and 3 because it contains avocado is allergic to
Okay, well, they can search out an alternative. I'm sure there are other yam creams. Question here.
Yes, about sleeping early or recent. So do you think there's no such thing as night person and early bird, and those who say they function well in the night, in the day they are early morning?
My afternoon lecture will explain all, but just say one thing. I married a man who was a night owl, but he's not a night owl anymore.
So you get trained yourself.
Yeah. And I never nagged because it never does any good.
But you think naturally some people are night owls?
I don't think so. I think they've been trained into it. Yeah, night shift is difficult. Question up the back. Yeah. Just shoot your question. Liver flush. I think I did one 25 years ago. I don't think there's a need to regularly do the liver flush unless you have a problem with the liver. In my book, Self-Heal by Design, I've got a very gentle liver flush. We don't do it at our retreat unless requested. Some people request to do it. I believe that if you're giving your body the right condition, that liver will naturally cleanse, unless of course someone's had exposure to heavy metals or chemicals, a lot of chemicals, because your liver is like the sieve, so that if there's a lot of waste going into your body, it's the liver that feels it. And of course, people that have had a lot of drugs and alcohol, that's very damaging to the liver. So, in those cases, the liver flush may be necessary. Yes? For what? Thyroid. That's a big question. The thyroid's main food is iodine, and whether you have underactive or overactive thyroid, it can both be a lack of iodine. And David Brownstein has written a book, Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It. So checking iodine levels are important, and also balancing the hormones, because high estrogen opposes thyroid function. So going on the yam cream is important, and keeping to the laws of health. But I have to stop now because we have to have lunch. So I look forward to seeing you back at 2:30, where we're going to have a look at sweet sleep. And we're going to go, first of all, though, we're going to go on a journey through the gastrointestinal tract. So we will have more time for questions this afternoon. So we'll have a break for lunch now.